Captain Li Wujin pressed his palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's railing, his eyes fixed on the mesmerizing dance of colors below. The Xantharian homeworld looked like a living jewel spinning in the darkness of space waves. A blue and green light pulsed across the planet's surface as millions of aquatic beings communicated through their natural bioluminescence. It was a sight that never failed to take his breath away. 3 years, he whispered to himself, remembering the first time he'd seen this world. Back then, humanity had been dying. The Red Plague had swept through the Mars colonies like wildfire, turning human blood into a toxic soup that killed within hours. Every Earth doctor, every medical AI, every pharmaceutical company had failed to find a cure. The death toll was climbing past 2 million when the Xantharians arrived. The memory was crystal clear in Wujin's mind. A massive bioship had appeared in Earth's orbit without any warning, its living hull shifting colors and patterns that seemed almost musical. World's militaries had scrambled their fleets, convinced this was an invasion. Instead, the aliens had broadcast a simple message in perfect English. "We have heard your people are suffering. We wish to help." Within 72 hours, Xantharian bioengineers had not only created a cure, but had also enhanced human immune systems to prevent similar plagues in the future. They asked for nothing in return except friendship. The grateful colonists on Mars had wept when the first Xantharian healers arrived, their translucent blue forms gliding through the medical centers like angels of mercy. "Sir, the afternoon shift is ready for briefing," said Lieutenant Park Mina, her voice cutting through his memories. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Wujin had specifically requested her for this mission because of her gift for languages. She could speak fluent Xantharian, which sounded like a combination of whale song and flowing water. "Have you ever seen anything like this before joining the fleet?" Wujin asked, gesturing toward the planet below. Min-Ah shook her head, her expression filled with wonder. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the ocean spirits back in Busan. She said they were beautiful creatures who helped lost sailors find their way home. I never believed her until I met my first Xantharian." The bridge of the UES Harmony hummed with quiet activity around them. The ship was one of humanity's newest diplomatic vessels, designed specifically for long-range peaceful missions. Crew of 200 represented the best of Earth's combined fleet, with officers from every continent working together. The ship's interior was a marvel of human engineering, mixed with Xantharian biotechnology. Living vines grew along the walls, providing fresh oxygen and a sense of natural beauty that helped with the psychological stress of deep space travel. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Kim Sungmin from his console. "We're receiving movement patterns from the Xantharian traffic control. They're asking if we'd like to visit the Great Reef Gardens before the ceremony tomorrow." Wujin smiled. Tomorrow marked the 3rd anniversary of the Mars colony salvation, as the historians were calling it. The Xantharians had planned a massive celebration with bioships from across their territory coming to honor the friendship between their species. Human diplomats, scientists, and even some of the Mars survivors were already planetside, sharing stories and technology. "Tell them we'd be honored," Wujin replied. "Ask if they need any help with the preparations." The crew worked with practiced efficiency around them. These weren't just soldiers or explorers anymore. They were ambassadors, representing humanity's best qualities to the galaxy. The friendship with the Xantharians had opened doors that humanity had never imagined possible. Other species had begun to take notice of the young race from Earth, some with curiosity, others with concern. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Hegemony," announced Mina suddenly, her cheerful demeanor shifting to alert professionalism. Wujin felt his stomach tighten, rarely contacted anyone directly, preferring to work through intermediaries and lesser species. For them to reach out personally meant something big was happening. "Put it through to the main display," he ordered, straightening his uniform. The holographic projector in the center of the bridge flickered to life. It's creating a 3-dimensional image so real it felt like the alien was standing right there with them. High Counselor Vexel was exactly as intimidating as the intelligence reports had described. His species, the Kethmori, were ancient rulers who had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. 6 powerful arms extended from his armored torso, each one capable of crushing human bones like twigs. His face was a nightmare of mandibles, and compound eyes that seemed to look right through a person's soul. Human vessel, Vextal's voice boomed through the bridge's speakers, each word dripping with contempt. By order of the Galactic Hegemony, all human vessels will withdraw from Syntherian space immediately. Your ... alliance has been deemed disruptive to galactic stability. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Every crew member had stopped what they were doing to stare at the imposing figure before them. Ujin felt the weight of their expectations, the responsibility of speaking for all humanity in this moment. His jaw tightened as he stepped forward. "This is neutral space, Counselor. We have every right to be here." Rights. Vextal's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with grinding metal. "You mammals have been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have maintained order for 10 millennia. Your friendship with these ... water-dwellers ... ends now." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Through the viewport, Ujin could see Xantharian bioships beginning to surface from the planet's oceans, their translucent hulls glowing with patterns of deep concern and confusion. The galaxy's oldest, the rulers had just declared war on humanity's friendship. Admiral Kim Taehan stopped pacing and slammed his fist on the metal table, making the coffee cups jump. The command center of Luna Station buzzed with nervous energy as officers hurried between workstations, their faces tight with worry. Outside the massive viewport, Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness. Peaceful and unaware of the storm brewing across the galaxy, "Sir, incoming message from the Proxima Centauri outpost," called out communications specialist Lee Hai-Soo, her voice cutting through the tension. "They're reporting strange ship movements in the outer systems." Taehan's weathered face looked even more tired than usual. 3 sleepless nights had taken their toll since the hegemony's ultimatum arrived. 30 standard days. That's all the time the galaxy's oldest rulers had given the Xantharians to abandon their human friends. The countdown timer on the main screen showed 27 days, 14 hours, and 36 minutes remaining. "Put it through," he ordered. Rubbing his temples, the hologram of Captain Park Junho materialized in the center of the room. The young officer looked shaken, his usually neat uniform wrinkled and stained with sweat. "Admiral, you need to see this," Junho said, his voice barely steady. "We've got massive hegemony fleets moving into position around every major Xantharian trade route. These aren't patrol ships, sir. These are war vessels." The main display shifted to show a tactical map of the local systems. Red dots marked enemy positions, and there were far too many of them. Taehan counted at least 50 major warships, each one capable of destroying an entire planet. "They're not just making threats," whispered Intelligence Officer Choi Soo-ben, her face pale as she analyzed the data streaming across her console. "We're getting reports from the outer colonies. Hegemony forces are blockading Xantharian trade routes, medical supplies, food shipments. Everything's being turned back." Taehan felt his heart sink. The Xantharians weren't warriors. Their entire civilization was built around healing, art, and peaceful exploration. They had no military to speak of, just a small fleet of bioships designed for research and rescue missions. Against the hegemony's ancient war machine, they were helpless. "Show me the blockade footage," he commanded, the screen filled with images that made everyone in the room gasp. Massive hegemony dreadnoughts, each one the size of a city, formed menacing walls across major shipping lanes. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons that could crack moons in half. Smaller Xantharian cargo ships floated nearby, their gentle, bioluminescent hulls pulsing with distress patterns as they were turned away from routes they had traveled safely for centuries. "Those supply ships are carrying medical equipment to the outer colonies," Sven reported, her voice thick with emotion. "Without those supplies, thousands of Xantharian children in the frontier worlds will die from preventable diseases." The Admiral closed his eyes, trying to process the magnitude of what they were facing. The hegemony wasn't just threatening war. They were slowly strangling an entire species, cutting off their lifelines one by one. Admiral, priority transmission. From the Xantharian homeworld, announced Lee Haisu. Put Ambassador Yu on the main screen. The familiar face of Ambassador Yu Haijin appeared, but she looked nothing like the calm, collected diplomat Taehyun had known for years. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her eyes red from crying, and her hands shook as she held the communication device. Admiral, I'm calling from the emergency session of the Xantharian High Council, she said, her voice cracking. Dave! Been debating for 18 hours straight. What's their decision, Ambassador? Haijin took a deep breath, composing herself. The Xantharian Council has refused the ultimatum. They consider their debt to humanity a sacred bond. Elder Aquilin spoke for the entire assembly when she said they would rather die as friends than live as cowards. The command center fell silent. Every officer knew what this meant. The Xantharians had just signed their own death warrant to protect their friendship with humanity. Ambassador, we can't let them suffer for our friendship, Taehyun said, his voice heavy with guilt. Maybe we should withdraw. Give them a chance to survive. Sir, with respect, you don't understand, Haijin replied, tears streaming down her face. I was there when Elder Aquilin addressed the council. She said something that still gives me chills. What is the value of survival if we abandon those who saved us? Our children will ask why we chose to breathe when we could have chosen to. Live with honor. Taehyun felt a chill run down his spine. The Xantharians were pacifist by nature, but their loyalty ran deeper than the ocean trenches they called home. They had made their choice, and it was the kind of choice that would echo through history. There's more, sir, Haijin continued. The younger Xantharians are volunteering to pilot supply ships through the blockades. They know it's suicide, but they're doing it anyway. They're calling it the Friendship Run. They'd rather die bringing medicine to their people than live under the hegemony's boot. The tactical display updated with new information. Red warning lights flashed as more hegemony ships moved into position. The noose was tightening. Sir, we're receiving distress signals from the Kepler 442 system, reported navigation officer. Jang Min-seok, a Xantharian medical ship, is under attack. They're requesting immediate assistance. Taehyun's hands clenched into fists. How many hegemony ships? For heavy cruisers, sir? The medical ship won't last 5 minutes. The admiral stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. Every human ship in the area was outnumbered 10-1. Sending help would be suicide. But the alternative was watching their allies die while they stood by and did nothing. Admiral. New intelligence from our deep space scouts, Sub announced, her voice urgent. The hegemony isn't just targeting trade routes. They're positioning assault fleets around Xantharian colony worlds. This isn't just a blockade anymore, sir. They're preparing for planetary bombardment. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Taehyun looked around the room at his officers, seeing his own fear and determination reflected in their faces. They all knew what was coming. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through fear and overwhelming force. They had crushed dozens of species who had dared to challenge their authority, but they had never faced humanity before. Get me a secure line to Fleet Command, Taehyun ordered. And send a message to every human vessel in the galaxy. It's time to call in all our favors. Countdown timer continued its relentless march. 27 days, 13 hours, and 52 minutes remaining. Commander Bang Jahoon's boots clanged against the metal floor of the rescue shuttle as he watched the horror unfold before him. The Coral's dream had been beautiful once. The massive research station had floated like a crystal palace in the void, its transparent biodomes housing the greatest minds of two species working together. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and shattered dreams spinning slowly in the darkness. Commander, we've got another survivor pod, called out rescue specialist Oh Sung-min, his voice tight with exhaustion. They'd been searching the debris field for 6 hours straight, pulling bodies from the wreckage. Most weren't breathing. Ji-hoon activated his helmet's enhanced vision, scanning the wreckage that stretched 4 kilometers in every direction. Pieces of laboratory equipment drifted past like metallic snow. A child's toy floated by, its bright colors now dulled by cosmic radiation. He had to look away. Sir, the medical bay is at capacity, reported Chief Medical Officer Dr. Park So-young over the comm. We need to transfer the critical cases to the hospital ship immediately. The rescue shuttle's cargo bay had become a makeshift emergency room. Human and Xantharian survivors lay side by side on medical beds, their bodies broken, but their spirits somehow still fighting. The Xantharians' natural bioluminescence flickered weakly, creating patterns of pain and confusion that any human who had worked with them could easily read. How many? Ji-hoon asked, though he dreaded the answer. 18,000 confirmed dead, whispered Dr. Songnari, the station's head researcher and one of the few human survivors. Her left arm was in a biocast, and a deep gash across her forehead had been sealed with emergency medical foam. It didn't even send a warning, just ... opened fire. Nari had been in the central laboratory when the attack began. She'd watched through the transparent walls as hegemony dreadnoughts decloaked around the station, their weapons already charging. The first salvo had ripped through the station's defensive shields like they were made of paper, and the children were. In the cultural exchange wing, she continued, her voice breaking. 60 young Xantharians were visiting our human kids, learning about art and music. They were painting pictures of their homeworld when the explosion started. Ji-hoon felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. The coral's dream had been a symbol of hope, proof that different species could work together to make the galaxy a better place. Human doctors had been developing new treatments for Xantharian deep-water sickness, while Xantharian bioengineers had been creating revolutionary medicines that could heal injuries that had once been fatal. Commander, look at this, called out evidence specialist Kim Yuna from her scanner station. The attack pattern shows they targeted the civilian quarters first. This wasn't a military strike. This was murder. The tactical display showed the devastating precision of the hegemony's assault. They had deliberately hit the living quarters, the schools, the cultural centers. The laboratories had been secondary targets. The message was clear. This was about terror, not military objectives. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, Ji-hoon could see the Xantharian rescue vessels arriving. Their bioluminescent hulls pulsed with grief patterns that made his heart ache. Unlike human ships with their hard metal surfaces, Xantharian vessels were grown rather than built. They looked like massive sea creatures swimming through space, their living hulls shifting colors to express the emotions of their crews. Sir, the peaceful current is requesting permission to dock, announced Navigation Officer Lee Jae-soon. They're bringing their deep space healers. Granted immediately, Ji-hoon ordered. The Xantharian rescue ship moved with fluid grace, its biotentacles reaching out to gently grasp the human shuttle. When the airlocks connected, the first thing that hit Ji-hoon was the smell of ocean water and something like flowering seaweed. The Xantharians maintained their ship's atmosphere to match their homeworld's environment. Elder healer Coraline glided into the cargo bay, her translucent blue form shimmering with patterns of deep sorrow. She was ancient by Xantharian standards, her bioluminescent patches dim with age, but her healing abilities were legendary throughout the galaxy. Commander of humans, she spoke in the flowing musical language of her people. We grieve together for the lost ones. Elder, I'm so sorry, Ji-hoon replied in halting Xantharian. Should have protected you better. The fault is not yours, young swimmer, Coraline replied, her patterns shifting to show understanding. The ancient ones who rule the darkness have made their choice. Now we must make ours. The Xantharian rescue teams worked alongside the humans with practiced efficiency. Their natural healing abilities, combined with advanced biomedical technology, saved lives that would have been lost otherwise. But even their miraculous skills couldn't bring back the dead. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Xantharian homeworld, announced Communications Officer Park Min-young. It's Elder Aquilin. The main display flickered to life, showing the leader of the Xantharian High Council. He was ancient, his bioluminescent patterns dim but still dignified. Behind him, Ji-hoon could see the great coral cities of the Xantharian homeworld, their spires reaching up through the ocean depths like underwater cathedrals. Friends of humanity, Aquilin's voice carried across the void. Heavy with sorrow but unbroken, we have lost many of our children today. The ancient darkness has shown its true face. But we do not ask you to avenge us. We ask only that you remember us. The deep currents carry us all to the same destination. The transmission continued to broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every civilized world. On 1,000 different planets, beings watched as the Xantharian leader spoke of forgiveness and acceptance in the face of genocide. We have lived as a peaceful people for countless generations, Aquilin continued. We chose friendship over fear, cooperation over conquest. If we must die for these beliefs, then we die with honor. Human friends, swim free. Do not let our fate drag you into the darkness. Transmission ended, leaving the rescue shuttle in stunned silence. Through the viewports, Ji-hoon could see other human vessels arriving on the scene. Cargo ships, medical vessels, even a few military escorts. Word of the massacre was spreading through human space like wildfire. Sir, we're receiving priority. Messages from Earth Command, reported Park Min-young. They want a full report on the attack. Ji-hoon looked around the cargo bay at the survivors, both human and Xantharian, lying together in their shared pain. The galaxy was watching, expecting humanity to abandon their allies to save themselves. The hegemony had calculated that humans were too young, too weak, too selfish to risk everything for friendship. ... Send this message to Earth Command, Ji-hoon said, his voice cold as the vacuum of space. Tell them the hegemony just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They touched our family. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity didn't just make allies. They made bonds that death itself couldn't break. Fleet Admiral Oh Sung-ho stood motionless in the command center of the UES Retribution, steel gray. Eyes fixed on the massive holographic display that dominated the room, the ship hummed with barely contained power beneath his feet. This wasn't just humanity's newest warship, it was their deadliest secret. A vessel that had been constructed in the shadow of Pluto where no alien eyes could see. Admiral, final ships are reporting in, announced Strategic Operations Officer Nam Yu-jin, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. The ghosts of Midway and Silent Thunder have reached their positions. Around him, the holographic displays showed something that should have been impossible. Red dots representing human vessels converged from every corner of known space like a closing fist. Ships that had been scattered across dozens of systems, seemingly going about their peaceful business, were now moving with deadly purpose toward a single point in space. Sir, we're receiving confirmation from the Mars Defense Fleet, reported Communications Chief Park Soo-han. Admiral Chen's battle group is 30 minutes out. They're running silent and dark, Oh nodded grimly. The Mars fleet was comprised of veterans who had survived the Red Plague, men and women who owed their lives to Xantharian healing. They had volunteered for this mission without hesitation, knowing they might not return home. All Calcines, this is Admiral O. He spoke into the fleet-wide his voice carrying across the void to 300 human vessels. Operation Tsunami is a go. The hegemony chose to target civilians. They chose to murder children. They made their choice, and now we make ours. The bridge crew worked with mechanical precision, their faces set in grim determination. These weren't just military personnel, they were volunteers from every walk of life. Scientists, teachers, engineers, even artists had joined the fleet when word of the massacre reached Earth. The attack on Coral's Dream had united humanity in a way that nothing else ever had. Admiral, the stealth frigates are reporting ready status, announced Lieutenant Colonel Jang Hai-wan, commander of the Elite Strike Corps. Her power armor gleamed under the bridge lights, each piece of technology representing decades of human innovation. Sir, stealth frigates are in position around the hegemony's primary fleet. They still don't know we're here. Oh allowed himself a cold smile. The hegemony had made their first critical mistake. They had underestimated human ingenuity. The galaxy's ancient rulers had been content to rely on their overwhelming size and firepower. Humanity had been developing new technologies born from their history of warfare against each other. Show me the target zone, he commanded. The tactical display shifted to show the hegemony's mighty fleet. 67 massive dreadnoughts hung in space like floating cities, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets, each Ship was over 5 kilometers long, carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. They had arranged themselves in the traditional hegemony formation, a show of force that had intimidated the galaxy for millennia. "Sir, their flagship is the Eternal Dominion," reported Intelligence Officer Kim Haisu. "It's High Admiral Krextel's personal command vessel. Our scans show it's heavily shielded and armed with their most advanced weapons. And they have no idea we're here," O replied, studying the enemy formation. "They're still thinking like the old empire. Show me our hidden assets." The display updated to reveal the truth. Dozens of smaller red dots appeared around the hegemony. Fleet human stealth ships that had been lurking in the darkness for days. The Seoul Defense Force's black budget projects were finally seeing the light of day. Ships that officially didn't exist, weapons that had never been tested in combat, technologies that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. The Phantom Strike reports all torpedo tubes loaded with quantum warheads. Announced Weapons Coordinator Lead Captain Park Min-soo confirms his ship is ready for simultaneous launch. O felt a chill run down his spine. Quantum warheads were humanity's most closely guarded secret, weapons that could collapse space-time itself. They had been developed in underground facilities on Europa, tested in the empty void between star systems where no one would notice the explosions. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Xantharian rescue fleets," called out Park Soo-hyun. "They are requesting permission to withdraw from the combat zone."
Captain Du-hyun.
"Status on the Xantharian rescue fleets?" O asked his tactical coordinator. "Secured and protected, sir. They're broadcasting evacuation coordinates to all remaining stations. The aquatic people are moving their civilians to the deep ocean worlds where they'll be safe." O nodded approvingly. The Xanth had learned from the Coral's Dream massacre. They were evacuating their people to places where hegemony ships couldn't follow the crushing depths of water worlds where only their bioships could survive. "Sir, we're receiving movement reports from the outer perimeter," announced Scanner. Specialist Jung Hae-won. "The hegemony is bringing in reinforcements. Make that 112 enemy vessels total." The numbers were staggering. The hegemony had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, enough ships to conquer entire sectors of space. They were preparing to make an example of humanity and their allies that would echo through the ages. "They want to show the galaxy what happens when you oppose them," O said quietly. "But they're about to learn what happens when you threaten the human family." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of advanced systems. Every officer knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about the Xantharians anymore. This was about whether humanity would cower before the galaxy's ancient bullies or stand up and fight for what was right.
"All ships."
"This is Admiral O." He spoke into the fleet-wide com. "Our friends asked us to remember them, but we're going to do more than remember. We're going to make sure this never happens again." The tactical display showed the final pieces falling into place. Human vessels emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and ready. The stealth ships prepared to drop their cloaking fields. The quantum warheads armed themselves with a deadly hum. "Admiral, all ships report." "Ready," announced Nam Yujin. "We have 347 vessels in attack formation." I looked around the bridge one final time, seeing the faces of young men and women who had volunteered to risk everything for their alien friends. They represented the best of humanity, courage, loyalty, and the refusal to abandon those who needed help. "Then let's show the galaxy what happens when you threaten our family," he said. "All ships, weapons free. Send the message." The transmission went out on all frequencies, broadcasting across the galaxy so every species would hear. "You touched our friends. That was your mistake." The hegemony was about to learn that humanity didn't just make allies. They made family. And nobody hurt the human family and lived to tell about it. The war lasted 17 days. 17 days that changed the galaxy forever. General Kwon, Yoon Seok, walked through the corridors of the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion, his boots echoing against the alien metal floors. The massive ship had been the pride of the hegemony fleet, a symbol of their 10,000-year rule over the galaxy. Now it flew under human control, its ancient weapons systems disabled, and its crew in custody. "General, the final sector reports are coming in," announced Major Kim Gi-woo, her tablet glowing with battle statistics. The hegemony's 7th Fleet surrendered 2 hours ago. That's the last of their organized resistance. Yun-seok nodded grimly. The speed of their victory still amazed him. The hegemony had ruled through fear and ancient privilege for millennia, but they had grown soft and complacent. They had forgotten what real warfare looked like. Humanity, on the other hand, had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war through countless battles against themselves. Sir High Counselor Vextel is ready for the surrender ceremony, reported Security Chief Park Seung-min. He's been moved to the main command deck as requested. The command deck of the Eternal Dominion was a massive chamber designed to intimidate. Towering holographic displays showed the positions of fleets across the galaxy, while the curved walls were covered in the historical victories of the hegemony. Now those same displays showed human ships, patrolling the systems that had been under alien control for centuries. High Counselor Vexel knelt in the center of the chamber, 6 powerful arms bound behind his back with restraints designed. For his species, the once mighty ruler of the galaxy looked broken, his compound eyes dim with defeat. Around him, his surviving council members waited in similar positions, their elaborate robes torn and dirty. Your species showed remarkable efficiency in warfare. Vextel wheezed through his mandibles. We ... underestimated your capabilities. Yun-seok studied the alien leader with cold eyes. This creature had ordered the massacre of innocent civilians, had murdered children to make a point. There would be no mercy, no forgiveness for such crimes. You didn't underestimate our capabilities, Yun-seok replied coldly. You underestimated our loyalty. The surrender ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every civilized world through the quantum communication network. On 1,000 different planets, beings watched as the mighty hegemony knelt before the young species from Earth. But what shocked the watching species most wasn't humanity's military might, it was what came next. Instead of claiming the hegemony's territory for themselves, instead of enslaving the defeated species, humanity did something unprecedented. They began to rebuild. 3 months later, President Don Soyoung stood on the floating platform of the rebuilt Zentharian capital, looking out over the crystal-clear waters of the planet's main ocean. The city had been constructed using a combination of human engineering and Zentharian biotechnology, creating structures that were both beautiful and functional. Citizens of the galaxy Soyoung addressed the assembled crowd, her voice carrying across the water to millions of beings both on planet and watching through holographic displays. Today marks not the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one. Behind her, Zentharian bioships danced with human vessels in the ancient pattern of celebration. The aquatic beings had survived the hegemony's attempts at genocide, their friendship with humanity stronger than ever. Their bioluminescent hulls pulsed with patterns of joy and gratitude that any observer could understand. We didn't seek conquest, Soyoung continued, her words translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We sought justice. Leaders will face trial for their crimes against civilians, but their species, the Kethmori people, will be free to choose their own path. The crowd murmured in surprise. Throughout galactic history, the victors had always enslaved or destroyed the defeated. The concept of allowing a conquered enemy to govern themselves was revolutionary. The trials will be fair and public, Soyoung announced. Representatives from every species in the galaxy are invited to observe. We will prove that justice doesn't require revenge, that strength doesn't require cruelty. In the months that followed, the war crimes trials became the most watched events in galactic history. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of the Coral's Dream Massacre, testimony from survivors, proof of the hegemony's systematic oppression of dozens of species. High Counselor Vextel and his inner circle were sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote prison world, while the lower-ranking officials who had simply followed orders were given lighter sentences. But the most shocking development came when President Soyoung announced the formation of the Galactic Alliance. It's a democratic council where every species would have an equal voice, regardless of their age, size, or military power. Let this be understood throughout the galaxy, Soyoung declared from the Alliance's first meeting hall, built on neutral ground in the Centauri system. Humanity stands with its allies. An attack on our friends is an attack on humanity itself. We don't just make allies, we make family. Nobody threatens the human family. The speech was interrupted by a commotion as Elder Aquilin of the Zentharians approached the podium. The ancient being's bioluminescent patterns were bright with emotion as he spoke. "Friends of humanity," he said in his flowing musical voice, "you have given us something we thought lost forever: hope. The deep currents that carry us through life have brought us together for a purpose. We pledge ourselves not just as allies, but as brothers and sisters in the vast ocean of space." The crowd erupted in cheers, not just from humans and Zentharians, but from representatives of dozens of species who had suffered under hegemony rule. The crystalline collective, silicon-based beings who had been enslaved as living computers. The vine walkers, plant-like creatures who had been forced to terraform worlds for their conquerors. The shadow dancers, energy beings who had been imprisoned in containment fields for centuries. All of them were free now, thanks to humanity's intervention. "The galaxy has learned a harsh lesson," Soyan continued as the cheers died down. "Humans are not just another species to be controlled or manipulated. We are something new, something that values loyalty above our own safety, justice above our own comfort." The holographic displays around the chamber showed the new reality. Human ships patrolled the space lanes, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Former hegemony worlds were rebuilding under their own governments. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries were reopening. "The age of the hegemony is over," Sa Young announced. "The age of the alliance has begun. An age where friendship matters more than fear, where cooperation conquers oppression, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them." As the ceremony concluded, the representatives began to mingle, species that had never spoken to each other before now working together to build a better future. The Zentharians shared their medical knowledge freely. The crystalline collective offered their computational abilities to help coordinate relief efforts. The Vine Walkers began the long process of healing worlds that had been stripped bare by the hegemony's greed, and through it all, human ships stood guard, their crews ready to defend their new family against any threat that might arise. The galaxy had learned that humanity didn't just make allies, they made bonds that death itself couldn't break. They had proven that sometimes the youngest voice in the room could speak the wisest words. Sometimes the newest species could teach the oldest lessons. The age of humanity had begun, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter. The end.